Now that we've examined the prerequisites for industrialization, we can turn to the Industrial Revolution itself. The early phase of the revolution centered overwhelmingly on textiles, especially cotton. Cotton was the ideal fabric for mechanized industry because, unlike wool, an animal fiber that often snags, stretches, and behaves inconsistently, cotton is a plant fiber that is smooth, predictable, flexible, and easy to process with machines. Cotton cloth production consisted of 5 major operations: harvesting, transporting, combing or carding, spinning or weaving, and finishing. Mechanization dramatically improved each of these steps, beginning with weaving, which led the way in transforming production into a faster and more efficient industrial process. The shuttle increased the productivity of weavers so much that each weaver now needed 4 spinners to supply enough thread. This imbalance spurred invention in spinning technology. 2 inventors independently developed water-powered spinning machines that significantly increased spinning output. However, these machines were too large to be used in homes and instead required centralized buildings where groups of workers could operate them in shifts. This innovation led to the creation of a new institution, the factory. With spinning and weaving accelerating, Britain needed massive quantities of raw cotton. But cotton comes with a major problem: the seed inside the boll. The breakthrough came with Eli Whitney's cotton gin in 1793, a machine that mechanically separated seeds from cotton fiber. This invention made cotton processing vastly faster and reduced the cost of raw cotton significantly. As a result, it transformed the American South into the world's dominant supplier of cotton. To understand the scale of this explosion in cotton production, output rose dramatically over a short period of time. In the 1770s, production was about 8 million pounds. By the 1790s, it had climbed to 37 million pounds. By 1815, it reached 100 million pounds, and by 1830, it soared to 250 million pounds. By 1830, the British cotton industry had become a massive force, employing over 500,000 workers, while cotton goods accounted for 40% of all British exports. These developments highlight how central cotton had become to the economy, making it the driving engine of the early Industrial Revolution. Improvements in weaving and finishing further accelerated industrial production. By 1815, the introduction of power looms dramatically increased the speed of weaving, while by 1800, advances in chemistry had reduced the finishing process from taking months to just a few days. By 1830, finishing cotton cloth could be completed in as little as 20 hours. Together, these developments made industrial production faster, cheaper, and far more efficient. Although cotton was the major product, the true driving force behind the Industrial Revolution was steam. James Watt revolutionized the steam engine by designing a separate condenser, which greatly improved efficiency, enabling continuous piston motion and converting the piston's movement into rotary motion that could turn wheels. These innovations made the steam engine far more practical and powerful, allowing it to be used widely in industrial machinery. Steam engines could now power a wide range of machinery, including pumps, looms, mills, factories, and even transportation systems. By 1800, Britain had more than 1,000 steam engines in operation, demonstrating how rapidly this technology had spread and how essential it had become to industrial production. Steam power transformed transportation in the early Industrial Revolution. The first practical steamboat was built by the American Robert Fulton, making inland and coastal travel faster and more reliable. At the same time, railroads emerged as another major innovation, beginning with the first practical steam locomotive developed by English engineer George Stephenson in the early 1800s. Railroads quickly became a defining symbol of industrial progress. Together, these improvements in transportation greatly increased industrial efficiency, lowered the cost of goods, and connected markets more closely than ever before. Britain's take-off years, from 1790 to 1815, marked the true launch of its industrial dominance. During this period, another major factor also contributed to Britain's success: the Napoleonic Wars, which lasted from 1793 to 1815. Britain and France were engaged in a prolonged conflict for over 2 decades, and as part of the war, they effectively ceased trading with one another. In 1806, Napoleon further intensified economic pressure by issuing the Continental System, which aimed to block British goods from reaching continental Europe. In the short term, these restrictions hurt British exporters by cutting them off from important markets. But in the long run, it gave Britain an enormous advantage. For a quarter of a century, Europe was largely cut off from British industrial advancements. As a result, countries on the continent were unable to purchase British industrial equipment or imitate its manufacturing technologies, causing them to fall behind technologically. This isolation allowed Britain to maintain a significant lead in industrial development, while much of Europe struggled to keep pace. By the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, Britain had surged far ahead of the rest of Europe in industrial development. It possessed a commanding lead in key areas such as machinery, steam power, engineering expertise, and overall industrial capacity, giving it a decisive advantage as the world's first fully industrialized nation. As a result, the entire 19th century became Britain's economic golden age, during which it led the world in industry, finance, global trade, technological innovation, and imperial power. This dominance allowed Britain to shape the global economy, expand its influence across continents, and set the standard for industrial and economic development worldwide. The Industrial Revolution took off due to a combination of key innovations and historical circumstances, including the mechanization of cotton production, the invention of the cotton gin, the development of the steam engine, and the rise of new transportation technologies. Additionally, Britain's decades-long isolation from European competitors during the Napoleonic Wars allowed it to advance industrially without significant competition. By 1850, these factors had enabled Britain to become the world's first industrial superpower, transforming global economics, labor systems, technological progress, and everyday life.